C.H. Spurgeon's Autobiography, Chapter 57, Building Our Holy and Beautiful House. How can the poor have the gospel preached to them if they cannot come and listen to it? And yet, how many of our places of worship there are into which they cannot come, or into which, if they are admitted, they only come as inferior creatures. They may sit in the back seats, but they are not to be known and recognized as being like other people. Hence the absolute necessity of having places of worship large enough to accommodate the multitude, and hence, moreover, the obligation to go into the highways and hedges. If the poor are to have the gospel preached to them, then we must take it where they can hear it. If I wanted to preach to English people, it would be of no use for me to go and stand in one of the peaks of the Himalayas and begin preaching. They could not hear me there, and this is of little avail to build the gorgeous structure for a fashionable congregation, and then to think of preaching in it to the poor. They cannot come there any more than the Hottentots can make the journey from Africa and listen to me here. I should not expect them to come to such a place, nor will they willingly enter it. The gospel should be preached, then, where the poor will come. We should have houses of prayer where there is accommodation for them, and where they are regarded and respected as much as any other rank and condition of men. It is with this view alone that I have labored earnestly to be the means of building a large place of worship, because I feel that, although the bulk of my congregation in the New Park Street Chapel consists of poor people, yet there are many in the humbler ranks of society who can by no possibility enter the doors because we cannot find room for the multitudes that desire to come. As you ask me, perhaps, why I do not preach in the street, I reply I would do so, and am constantly doing so in every place except London. But here I cannot do it, since the enormous crowds that would probably assemble would be likely to cause a breach of the peace. I trembled when I saw 12,000 persons on the last occasion when I preached in the open air. Therefore, I have thought it best, for the present at least, to desist, until happy there shall be fewer to follow me. C.H.S. in Sermon Preached at the Music Hall, Royal Surrey Gardens, January 25, 1857, from the text, "The poor have the gospel preached to them." In June 1856, the building committee for the proposed new tabernacle was appointed. Their first meeting was held on June 16th, and they were able so far to put their recommendations into practical form that it was possible to hold the first public meeting in aid of the project in New Park Street Chapel on Monday evening, September 29th. In view of the ultimate expenditures of over £31,000, it is interesting to read the official account of that early gathering, and the estimate then formed as a probable financial responsibility the church and congregation thought of incurring. Resolutions were unanimously passed. Number 1, that the tabernacle holding 5,000 seatings should be erected, and number 2, that subscription list should be opened. Upwards of £3,000 was promised, and the committee were very happy in their expectation that the sum of £12,000, the amount required, will be speedily forthcoming. They earnestly solicit the hearty cooperation of the Christian public in this undertaking. Their chief object in this movement is the welfare of the masses, who hitherto have been neglected of their souls. Steady, earnest assistance is required that the building may be erected. It would be gratifying to the committee if every church in the kingdom had a brick or a beam in the new tabernacle. No one in the densely crowded and enthusiastic audience on that Monday evening could have imagined that just 3 weeks later a sorrow-stricken assembly would be gathered in the same place without the beloved pastor, who had been utterly prostrated by the great catastrophe at the Surrey Gardens Music Hall. Among the many comments and criticisms of that trying period, several newspapers, including the Times, the Daily News, and the Saturday Review, stated that the contemplated new tabernacle was to hold 15,000 people. So at the first service in the music hall, after the accident, Mr. Spurgeon corrected this exaggeration and explained the need for a larger permanent home for his church and congregation. He said, "There have been a great many rumors abroad respecting the new chapel, the building of which has been contemplated by a number of my friends, It has been asserted that we want to erect a tabernacle capable of holding 15,000 people. With respect to that assertion, I will only say that some truthful person has thought fit to put a 1 before the 5, for we have never entertained even a thought of building such a place. It has, however, been judged that a place of worship capable of accommodating about 5,000 persons is necessary. For my own part, I have no wish for such a large sanctuary. Only I cannot bear to see, Sabbath after Sabbath, as many people go away as are able to enter the chapel, where we have been accustomed to assemble for worship. It is the will of people to come in great multitudes to listen to my proclamation of the truths of the gospel. I have not asked them to come. It is of their own free will that they meet with us, and if it is a sin for me to have so many hearers, it is at least an uncommon sin, which many others would like to commit if they could. It has been said, let those who wish to hear Mr. Spurgeon pay for their seats, but that method would defeat the object I have in view. I want to preach to those who cannot afford to pay for seats in a chapel, and it is my wish to admit as many of the general public as possible. Many of my friends I know are most anxious on the subject of our larger place of worship that we have at present, and would give double what they would have done if they could afford it. It is much to the inconveniences of my congregation to attend here. We have a comfortable place of worship at New Park Street. There we are very happy together, and I have as many hearers and church members as any man need desire. It is only with the view of winning more souls to God that we have come to this larger building that we wish to erect our proposed tabernacle. Should we be charged with seeking any other objects, the judgment day will declare what our motives have truly been. The next large meeting in aid of the building fund was held on Monday evening, March 23, 1857, at the New Park Street Chapel, which was again quite crowded. The chairman was W. Joynson, Esquire, of St. Mary Cray, whose denomination during the evening reached together 200 pounds. The amount paid in or promised at the meeting was over 500 pounds, making the total to the date about 4,500. Mr. Spurgeon, in his address recounted the history of the enlargement of New Park Street and of the services at Exeter Hall and the Surrey Gardens Music Hall, of the latter gatherings, and of the need for the new tabernacle. He said, in the music hall we have reason to believe that the Lord has gathered great numbers to his heavenly silo. Few have witnessed the teeming multitudes who have assembled there to join in the praises of God, and have done so with tears, and it has well nigh overpowered me many a time. Truly the Lord hath done wonderful things for us, whereby we are laid upon solemn obligation to him. The Lord, having given me favor in the eyes of the people, and blessed me with not a little success, the number of members has so increased as well nigh to fill this place. Indeed, we have 300 more friends whose names are on the church book than are able to sit down in the area of the chapel to partake of the communion. And if the Lord should continue to bless my labors in the years to come, as he has done in those that are past, very soon there will not be room for an unconverted sinner to get into the chapel. What should I do then? Oh, you say, there is the work of building up God's people. I know there is, but I also know what it is to travail in soul for the unsaved, and I cannot bear the thought of not having sinners to speak to. Therefore it becomes me to look for a larger place where they can be permanently gathered. The music hall has been made a trap for many a soul, but then it would not do always to worship there. Many of the converts want to join the church, and so come regularly under my ministry. But we have no room for them here. Our chapel is altogether out of proportion to the crowds that gather with us at Surrey Gardens. Where do they spend their Sabbath evenings? It is my duty to look after them. Long ago I made up my mind that either a suitable place must be built, or I would resign my pastorate. You by no means consented to the latter alternative. Yet I sternly resolve that one or the other must be done. Either the tabernacle must be erected, or I would become an evangelist and turn rural dean of all the commons in England and vicar of all the hedgerows. Some nobleman speaking or writing of this matter said, "Who knows whether the place will ever be built?" I wrote to him and said, "You need not ask that question, my lord. There's a man alive who will earn the money. Yes, it shall be had. I have prayed to the Lord, and I shall keep on praying, and I know he will not refuse my request." A newspaper, Canard, in the Morning Star, June 10, 1857, might have checked the flow of contributions for the tabernacle, but the pastor promptly contradicted the story and so neutralized its effects. The Contemporary suggested that instead of Mr. Spurgeon being done by the person referred to, it was the editor of the Star who had himself been done by a penny a liner. The paragraph was as follows: Mr. Spurgeon done by a pickle-selling Tartuffe. Most persons have observed in the newspapers and on the walls of the Metropolis announcements of a reward for the apprehension of Mr. an oil and pickle merchant in the bogs, who has not surrendered to his bankruptcy, but has left the country in company with, and it is said, his governess. It may not be known that in Mr. we have to add another to the unhappy long list of persons who have traded on religion for the purpose of deluding the world in general. Mr. who was accustomed to wearing a white neckcloth among his other personal adornments, was treasurer of the funds in process of collection for the new chapel about to be erected for Mr. Spurgeon, by whose teaching, it would seem, he has profited but little, and has absconded, it is said, with over £2,000 of the popular young Baptist money. Mr. Spurgeon wrote the following letter, which the editor at once published. Nightingale Lane, Clapham, June 10, 1857. Sir, I beg to call your immediate attention to several errors in an article in this Morning Star headed Mr. Spurgeon done by a pickle-selling Tartuffe. I cannot imagine the origin of so extraordinary a statement, for it might as well have been said that Adam robbed my orchard as that Mr. had appropriated our funds. I am happy to say that the money for the new tabernacle are preserved in the London and Westminster Bank in two good names, and have never been placed in any jeopardy up to the present. It is very probable that Mr. was a hearer of mine, for in a congregation of such magnitude he may have been sometimes included, but he was not a member of my church. He did not hold a seat, nor did he regularly attend. He may have worn a white neckcloth, but he did not purchase it out of our funds, for he was in no way whatever connected with us, beyond being an occasional attendant. If ever your informant has been under the sound of my ministry, I can only regret that I must put him down with as one who did not hear to profit. Men should be cautious of their repetition of unfounded tales, and especially so in cases where the sacred name of religion is concerned. I am yours faithfully, C.H. Spurgeon. On September 7, 1857, a meeting was held at New Park Street Chapel for the double purpose of giving thanks to God for the success that had attended the pastor's labors in gathering funds for the new tabernacle, and of encouraging the people to do their utmost for the same object. On this occasion, Mr. Spurgeon said that the many thousands of hearers who regularly worship at the music hall proved that, as soon as the building could be erected to seat 5,000 persons, the number of friends might be safely calculated upon to fill it, and they would then have the best and strongest church in London. Sir Morton Peto had promised to get his agent to look out for a suitable site, and he had also guaranteed substantial help to the building fund, which continued to grow, though not as rapidly as the young pastor desired. The following resolution, preserved in the church book, shows that in July 1858, the time appeared to have arrived for making a further advance in connection with the much-needed new tabernacle. Meeting of the male members of the church, Monday, July 26, 1858. Our pastor conveyed this meeting in order to acquaint the church with the position of the great design for erecting a new tabernacle, and also to obtain the opinion of the church as to immediate progress. The church unanimously resolved that the committee be desired to proceed with all prudent speed, and agree that our pastor should leave us alternative months, if he saw it necessary to do so, in order to collect the needful funds. The meeting afforded a most pleasing proof of the unity and zeal of the brethren. This was a memorable gathering of the men of the church, in accordance with the provisions of the trust deed, to which Mr. Spurgeon often referred when relating the history of the building of the tabernacle. His account of it will be found with other autobiographical paragraphs at the close of the present chapter. It was not long after this time that the public announcement was made concerning the purchase of the freehold site for the new sanctuary, and on December 13, 1858, New Park Street Chapel was once more crowded with an eager and expectant audience, which had assembled to hear a statement of the progress made and to devise steps for recruiting the funds necessary for building the proposed tabernacle. The Venerable Deacon James Lowe presided, and Deacon Thomas Cook, the Honorable Secretary, presented a report which contained the following information with regard to the financial and other progress made by the building committee. Their first efforts were directed to adopt measures for raising funds and obtaining a site for the building, in both of which they have met with abundant success. Since the opening of the account in September 1856 to the present date, a period of 27 months, the sum of £9,418, 19 shillings 7 dimes has been received, or an average of £348, 17 shillings per month. The object, however, of paramount importance to the committee was obtaining an eligible site for the building. This was indeed surrounded with innumerable difficulties which seemed at times to be beyond the power of the committee to overcome. At length, however, their labors were crowned with complete success, and they were rewarded for their long and tedious negotiation by obtaining the promise of Fishmongers' Company to sell a portion of their land to Newington. In announcing this, the committee cannot refrain from expressing their high appreciation of the service rendered by W. Joyson, Esquire, of St. Mary's, Cray, who, when it was stated that an act of Parliament would in all probability be required to legalize the sale of the land, in the most generous manner offered to meet the expense which might be incurred in so doing, to the extent of £400. The committee feel that the completion of this great and important work, which is now brought to so satisfactory a state, must rest entirely with the Christian public, and it only remains for those who desire to see the kingdom of Christ extended in this our world of sin and iniquity, to cooperate with them, and the house shall be built. And long may the sure and certain message of salvation echo within its walls. After several other ministers had addressed the meeting, Mr. Spurgeon said, "I do not feel in speaking order tonight, because I seem to have something in my heart so big that I am not able to get it out. I cannot, however, resist the temptation of saying a few words on a topic which you might think far remote from the object of the meeting. The things in which we live are most wonderful, and I wish that this church should be in the future what it has been in the past, the advance guard of the times. I cannot help observing that during the last 4 or 5 years a remarkable change has come over the Christian mind. The Church of England has been awakened. How has this been accomplished, and what means have been used? I cannot help remembering that God honored us by letting us stand in the front of this great movement. From our example, the blessed fire has run along the ground and kindled a blaze which shall not soon be extinguished. When I first heard that clergymen were to preach in Exeter Hall, my soul leaped within me, and I was ready to exclaim, Lord, now lettest thou thy servant depart in peace. When I heard that Westminster Abbey was opened on Sunday evenings for the preaching of the gospel, and then St. Paul's Cathedral, I was overwhelmed with gratitude and prayed that only the truth, as it is in Jesus, might be preached in those places, and that the ministers might travail in birth for souls, that Christ might be formed in them, the hope of glory. I never felt such union to the Church of England as I do now. The fact is that when a youth in the country, I was accustomed to associate with the name of clergyman, fox hunting, and such like amusements. I abhorred them, and I thought they were all like that. Now I see them anxious to win souls to Christ. I cannot help loving them, and as long as they go on to feel the value of souls, I shall continue to pray for them. Now, seeing that the Lord has thus honored us to be leaders of others, we must continue to lead. We must not take one step backwards, but must still be the very van of the army. What if God should spread the late revival, and that the New Park Street Church still go on as the advance guard of the host? Now, as to the tabernacle, I am quite certain that it will be built, and that I shall preach in it, and I have no doubt that the money will be forthcoming. That matter is no burden to me. Some of you have done a great deal, but you ought to have done a great deal more. There are others who, if measured by oughts, ought not to have done so much. We have not done badly after all, for after paying £5,000 for the site, we have a balance in hand of £3,600. I hope that you will all agree that the spot is a most eligible one. Though some recommended Kensington, others Holloway, and others Clapham. Having secured the ground, the next thing we did was to advertise for plans, and following is the circular issued to architects. The Committee for Building the New Tabernacle for the Congregation of the Reverend C.H. Spurgeon give notice that they are prepared to receive designs or models from architects or others for the erection of a building on land situated near the Elephant and Castle, Newington, for which they offer the following premium: £50 for the best design, £30 for the second, and £20 for the third. The following are the conditions: the building to contain on basement floor, which is to be 5 feet below the level of footway, schoolrooms, 12 feet high for boys and girls, and lecture hall to seat 800 persons. The chapel above to seat 3,000 persons, with standing room for not less than 1,000, and with not more than 2 tiers of galleries, each sitting to be not less than 2 feet 6 inches by 1 foot 7 inches. Gothic designs will not be accepted by the committee. The plan of the Surrey Music Hall has proved to be acoustically good and will be decidedly preferred. The total cost, including architect's commission, warming, ventilation, lighting, boundary walls, fences, paths, fittings, and every expense, to be about £16,000. If the architect, to whom a premium may be awarded, shall be employed to superintend the execution of the work, he will not be entitled to receive such premium. Each architect to state the commission he will require an outlay. Such commission to include all expenses for measuring, superintendency, etc. The designs in respect of which premiums may be given are thereupon to become the property of the committee. The designs to be addressed to the building committee, New Park Street Chapel, Southwark, and delivered carriage-free on or before the 31st day of January 1859. Each design to be inscribed with a motto and an envelope, with the same motto on the outside containing the name and address of the competitor, to be sent also to the committee. The envelopes will not be opened until the premiums are awarded. The architects competing will be requested to act as judges and to award the first and third premium. The second premium will be awarded by the committee. No architect will be allowed to select his own design. More than 250 architects have applied for this circular, all of whom appear desirous to build the place, so that I anticipate we shall have a very pretty tabernacle picture gallery by and by. There are many friends with us tonight who attend the music hall. They cannot get in here on a Sabbath evening, so they are obliged to be content with half a loaf. For their sake, I want to see the new chapel built, for I cannot bear the thought that so many should come here Sabbath after Sabbath, unable to get inside the doors. Now, as to money, we say that the building is to cost about £16,000, but depend upon it, it will be £20,000. Someone asked, perhaps, how are we to get it? Pray for it. When I thought of the large sum, I said to myself, it may as well be 20,000 as 10,000, for we shall get one amount as readily as the other. Brethren, we must pray that God will be pleased to give us the money, and we shall surely have it. If we had possessed more faith, we should have had it before now. And when this tabernacle is built, we shall find money enough to build a dozen. Look at what Mr. Mueller of Bristol has done by faith and prayer. When this land was threatened with a famine, people said, "What will you do now, Mr. Mueller?" "Pray to God," was the good man's answer. He did pray, and the result was that he had an overwhelming increase. Do you ask, what is required of me tonight? Let me remind you that all you possess is not your own. It is your master's. You are only stewards, and must hereafter give an account of your stewardship. Evidently, many who were present were touched by the pastor's words, for the sum collected and promised during the evening amounted to £1,000. It will be noticed that the date for sending in plans, models, and estimates was January 31st, a day which was afterwards to become sadly memorable in the history of the church at the Metropolitan Tabernacle. For on that day in 1892, its beloved pastor heard the call, "Come up higher," and went to join the General Assembly and Church of the Firstborn, which are written in heaven. Carefully, readers, you will also note that although about £16,000 was the amount the architects were to allow for the total cost of the building and its fittings and surroundings, Mr. Spurgeon said, "Depend upon it, it will be £20,000. And so it was, and more too. In February 1859, the competing architects, drawing 62 sets in one model, were exhibited in the Newington Horse and Carriage Repository and proved exceedingly attractive both to the New Park Street congregation and the general public. By a vote taken among themselves, about 40 of the competitors assigned the first premium to the design submitted by Mr. E. Cookworthy Robbins. The following letter from Mr. Spurgeon to Mr. Roberts shows the pastor himself placed the prize design among the first three, but that the drawings submitted by Mr. W. W. Pocock had been selected by himself and the committee. Dear Sir, I am requested by the committee to forward the enclosed check for £50 as the first premium. In so doing, allow me to congratulate you upon the architectural taste which is so manifest in your drawing. In my own personal selection, your design was one of three, which I consider to be preeminent among the many. We have inspected the designs with great care and long deliberation, and although we are compelled to prefer Mr. Pocock's design as the best basis for our future building, we could not but regret that we were thus compelled to lose your service in the erection. You may not be aware that we have received from private services in the erection. You may not be aware that we have received from private friends of yours and persons for whom you may not be aware that we have received from private friends of yours and persons for whom you have erected buildings the most flattering testimonials of your ability. Since these were unsolicited on your part and probably unknown to you, We thought them worthy of the highest consideration, and should have felt great pleasure in entrusting our great undertaking to your hands. Wishing you every prosperity, I am yours heartily, C.H. Spurgeon. The committee awarded the second premium, £30, to Mr. W. W. Pocock, and the tabernacle was erected after his design, though with considerable modifications, including the abandonment of the towers at the four corners of the building. When Mr. Spurgeon found that they would probably cost about £1,000 each, he thought that money could be more profitably expended, and therefore had them omitted, and the style of the structure was altered to the form that has since become familiar to hundreds of thousands of earnest worshippers from all quarters of the globe. The motto on the envelope accompanying Mr. Pocock's drawings was the word Metropolitan, a singular appropriate one, for the building erected under his superintendency was to contain the word in its official designation, the Metropolitan Tabernacle. When the plans were finally settled and the tenders were received and opened, it was found that the highest amount to £26,370 and the lowest to $21,500, with a savings of $1,500 if Bath instead of Portland stone should be used. This was the tender of Mr. William Higgs, and at the near net estimate of $20,000, the very figures the pastor had stated some months before the contract was signed. Mr. Spurgeon often said that it was one of his chief mercies that Mr. Higgs was the builder of the tabernacle, and it was a special cause of joy to many that the contract was secured by one of the pastor's own spiritual children, who afterwards became an honored deacon of the church and one of the dearest personal friends and most generous helpers his ministry ever had. All needful preparation for the great building having been made, the foundation stone was laid by Sir Samuel Morton Petrel, Bart, MP, on Thursday afternoon, August 16, 1859. About 3,000 persons were present at the ceremony, which was commenced with a singing of the 100th Psalm and prayer by Mr. Spurgeon, after which Mr. B.W. Carr read the statement which he had drawn up on behalf of the deacons, rehearsing the history of the church as summarized in Chapter 28 of the Autobiography. The closing paragraph, narrating the unparalleled advance made during the 5 years from 1854 to 1859 at New Park Street, Exeter Hall, and the Surrey Gardens, has been anticipated in the former part of the present volume, but a brief extract from it will show the tenure of the deacons' testimony to their pastor's usefulness throughout the whole period of his ministry among them. Incidents of many generations and the cherished reminiscences of the older members prepared for the Reverend Charles Haddon Spurgeon that enthusiastic welcome with which he was spontaneously hailed by this church. From the day he commenced his labors in our midst, it pleased the Lord our God to grant us a revival which has steadily progressed ever since. Among the earliest additions to our number, there were not a few disciples of Christ who, after making a profession under faithful ministers long ago departed to the rest, had wandered about and found no settled home. Many such were gathered into the fold of our fellowship. Here their souls have been restored, while they have found the presence of the Good Shepherd, who maketh us to lie down in green pastures, and leadeth us beside the still waters. But the great work was that of conversion. So did the Holy Ghost accompany the preaching of the gospel with divine power, that almost every sermon proved the means of awakening and regeneration to some who were hitherto dead in trespasses and sins. Thus our church became an asylum for the aged, as well as nursery for the babies of our Savior's family. The prejudice against entering a nonconformist sanctuary has, in many instances, been laid aside by those who have worshipped within the walls of an edifice that is justly accounted neutral ground, it being sacred or profane according to the temporary use it is made to serve. Every week has borne testimony to the saving influence of the gospel, as it has been proclaimed in a music hall to an assembly of 5,000 persons. Still, with so large a congregation and so small a chapel, the inconveniences of a temporary meeting place becomes more and more grievously felt. There is, and has been for the past 2 years, as fair an average of that large congregation who are devout persons and regular attendants as in any sanctuary in London. Yet not 1/3 of them can find a place under the same ministry for more than one service during the week. The church members far exceed the extent of accommodation in our own chapel to provide all of them with sittings. It is only by having 2 distinct services that we can admit our communicants to the table of the Lord. The necessary, therefore, for the undertaking that we assemble to inaugurate must be perceived by all. Every attempt to trace the popular demand for evangelical teaching to sporadic excitement has failed. The pastor of the New Park Street Church has never consciously departed from the simple rule of faith recorded in the New Testament. The doctrines he has set forth are identical with those which have been received by godly men of every section of the church since the days of the apostles. The services of religion have been conducted without any peculiarity or innovation. No musical or aesthetic accompaniments have ever been used. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty. The history of our progress for 5 years is patient to the world. The example has been capable of successfully stimulating other churches in their aggressive efforts to save perishing souls. With earnest individual and united prayer, each step has been taken. And to the exclusive honor and praise of our Lord, our stone of Ebenezer is this day laid. After the reading of the paper, Mr. Spurgeon said, "In the bottle which is to be placed under stone, we have put no money, for one good reason, that we have none to spare. We have not put newspapers, because a bit we admire and love the liberty of the press, yet that is not so immediately concerned in this edifice. The articles placed under the stone are simply these: the Bible, the Word of God. We put that as the foundation of our church. Upon this rock does God build the ministration of His truth. We know of nothing else as our standard. Together with this, we have put the Baptist Confession of Faith, which was signed in the olden times by Benjamin Keach, one of the eminent predecessors. We put also the Declaration of the Deacons, which you have just heard read, printed on parchment. There is also an edition of Dr. Ripton's hymn book, published just before he died. And then, in the last place, there is a programming of this day's proceedings. I do not suppose that the New Zealander who one day is to set on the broken arch of London Bridge will make much out of it. If we had put gold and silver there, it is possible he might have taken it back to New Zealand with him, but I should not wonder if ever England is destroyed, these relics will find their way into some museum in Australia or America, where people will spell over them some of our old-fashioned names and wonder whoever those good men could be who are inscribed here, as Samuel Gull, James Lowe, Thomas O'Neilly, Thomas Cook, George Windsor, William P. O'Neilly, George Moore, and C.H. Spurgeon. And I think they will say, "Oh, depend upon it, they were some good men, so they put them in stone there." These deacons are living stones indeed. They have served the church well and long. Honor to whom honor is due. I am glad to put their names with mine here, and I hope we shall live together forever in eternity. Sir Morton Peto, having duly laid the stone, addressed the assembly as follows: "My Christian friends, I congratulate my excellent friend Mr. Spurgeon, the deacons, the church, and all assembled here on this interesting event. It is one to which you have looked forward for some time. It is the commencement of an edifice in which we trust that the era of usefulness inaugurated by your pastor's ministry will be continued and largely increased. That admirable paper which was read before the stone was laid gave you a succulent but interesting account of the church up to the present time. We hope that those glories which have been so remarkably shown in the early history of the Church may not only be continued in the salvation of a large number that has ever yet been known, but that in years to come those glories may be even surpassed, and that all who live may have the happiness of feeling that the work which has been begun today was one which the Lord had eminently blessed. I could not but feel during the reading of that paper that the fact there stated that the church at New Park Street is larger at the present time than can be accommodated in the building, that there is practically no room in the chapel for the world, in one which to every Christian heart must show that there remain nothing but for the church to arise and build. I know it may be said that the music hall and other large places might have given Mr. Spurgeon an opportunity of making known the unsearchable riches of Christ. But then there are other institutions in connection with the edifice of this kind which are of equal importance with that to which I have referred. We have not only the assembly of the church within its walls, but we must have an opportunity of gathering the young for instruction. And when we look to the fact that this new tabernacle will accommodate about 2,000 Sunday school children, and also place nearly 5,000 people in the position of hearing the gospel of Christ, we not only feel that the world will be accommodated to hear, and the church amply provided for, but the young will be trained up in the way in which they should go. And my excellent friend Mr. Spurgeon, as I have no doubt he will be spared, and I trust he will be spared, opens this place and declares a full, free, and finished gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ as the basis of his ministry in years to come, as it has been the basis of his ministry in the past. I hope that it will be in a chapel free from debt. I know there is no testimony which his loving heart would so freely acknowledge as that testimony to himself, or rather to his Lord through him, which would enable him to feel when he first ascends the pulpit of this new chapel. I am here preaching the gospel to a people who are assembled in an edifice which has no claim whatever to discharge. Accept my sincere congratulations on this event, my hearty prayers that every wish of yours may be more than abundantly realized in all the future, that my dear friend Mr. Spurgeon and his deacons and friends may not only live to see this house completed without accident, but that they and you, occupying it together, may have what, after all, is of the greatest importance, a rich baptism of the Holy Spirit, without whom all that we undertake is worthless. Mr. Spurgeon then said, My dear friend, this is not the first time that I have borrowed light from Sir Morton Beto, S-P-E-T-O. I have often cheered the darkness of a long railway journey by a most excellent lamp of his own manufacture, which he kindly presented to me that I might see to read by it as I was traveling. I am very glad to see him blazing forth again today. In the light of his countenance, many of us have been made glad. It is my earnest prayer that, while God is pleased to bless him with wealth and rank and influence, he may find it quite as easy to serve his God in the future as he has done in the past. We owe him much, as dissenters, for his great zeal and wisdom in having brought through the House of Commons an act whereby our chapels are well secured to us. I pray that God may give him grace every day, that he may know his own title in the kingdom of heaven to be clearer and clearer as years come upon him. Before I speak about the building we are going to erect here, I want just to mention that I had a sweet letter from that eminent servant of God, John Angel James of Birmingham, in reply to one I had written asking him to come to this meeting. He said I would have done so if I had been well enough, but I am unable to travel. My work is almost done. I cannot serve my master much longer, but I can still do a little for him. I preached perhaps once on the Sabbath, and I still continue to do what I can with my pen. What a mercy, he adds, to have been permitted to serve my master so long. We frequently exchanged notes, and in his last letter to me he said, My dear brother, be on your watchtower and gird your sword on your thigh. The devil hates you more than most men, for you have done so much damage to his kingdom, and if he can, he will trip you up. I am sure what good Mr. James says is true, But I know that he and you and many more of the Lord's people are praying that I may be upheld and that we may successfully carry through this great undertaking. I never answer any slanders against myself and very seldom answer any questions about what I mean to do. I am obliged to be a self-contained man, just going on my own way and letting other people go on in their own way. If I am wrong, I will be accountable to my own master, but to no flesh living. And if I am right, the day will declare it. God knows how sincere are my intentions, even when I may have acted unwisely. I said some time ago, when our brethren were half afraid, the tabernacle is to be built, and it will be built, and God will fill it with his presence and glory. There is no doubt whatever about the money being obtained. I scarcely know that I have asked any individual to give anything, because I have such a solid conviction that the money must come. I suppose that out of all that is now in our hands, I have myself collected more than half through my preaching, and I dare say that is how the larger part of the remainder will come, through the kindness of the providential and metropolitan churches, who have almost all treated me with the noblest generosity. I give this day my hearty thanks to all who have helped me, and I do not know but what I may as well add, to all who have not helped me. Many of them mean to do so, and therefore I will thank them beforehand. There is one gentleman here today who is to address you. I think, I'll bet that he can speak admirably. The best part of his speech will be made with his hand, for he has £3,000 with him to give as a noble donation from an aged servant of Christ, long sick and confined, to his house, but who loves Christ's ministers and desires to help Christ's cause. He would not like me to mention his name, and therefore I shall not do it. And now, my dear friends, as to the place to be erected here, I have a word or two to say with regard to its style, with regard to its purposes, and with regard to our faith and our prospects. It is to me a matter of congratulations that we shall succeed in building in this city a Grecian place of worship. My notion of architecture is not worth much, because I look at a building from a theological point of view, not from an architectural one. It seems to me that there are two sacred languages in the world. There was the Hebrew of old, and I doubt not that Solomon adopted Jewish architecture for the temple, the Hebrew fashion and form of putting stones together in harmony with the Hebrew faith. But there is but one more sacred language, not Rome's mongrel tongue, the Latin. Glorious as that may be for the battle cry, it is of no use for preaching the gospel. The other sacred language is the Greek, and that is dear to every Christian's heart. Our fullest revelation of God's will is in that tongue, and so are our noblest names for Jesus. The standard of our faith is Greek, and this place is to be Grecian. I care not that many an idol temple has been built after the same fashion. Greek is the sacred tongue, and Greek is the Baptist tongue. We may be beaten in our own version sometimes, but in the Greek, never. Every Baptist place should be Grecian, never Gothic. We owe nothing to the Gothics as religionists. We have a great part of our scriptures in the Grecian language, and this shall be a Grecian place of worship. And God give us the power and life of that master of the Grecian tongue, the Apostle Paul, that here like wonders may be done by the preaching of the word, as were wrought by his ministry. As for our faith as a church, you have heard about that already. We believe in the 5 great points commonly known as Calvinistic. But we do not regard those 5 points as being barbed shafts, which we are to thrust between the ribs of our fellow Christians. We look upon them as being 5 great lamps, which help to irradiate the cross, or rather 5 bright illuminations springing from the glorious covenant of our triune God, and illustrating the great doctrine of Jesus crucified. Against all comers, especially against all lovers of Arminian, we defend and maintain pure gospel truth. At the same time, I can make this public declaration that I am no antinomianism. I belong not to the sect of those who are afraid to invite the sinner to Christ. I warn you, I invite him, I exhort him. Hence, then, I have contumely on either hand. Inconsistency is charged against me by some people, as if anything that God commanded could be inconsistent. I will glory in such inconsistency even to the end. I bind myself precisely to no form of doctrine. I love those 5 points as being the angels of the gospel, but then I love the center being the angels better still. Moreover, we are Baptists and we cannot swerve from this matter of discipline, nor can we make our church half and half in that matter. The witness of our church must be one and indivisible. We must have one Lord, one faith, and one baptism. And yet dear to our own hearts is that great article of the Apostles' Creed. I believe in the communion of saints. I believe not in the communion of Episcopalians alone. I do not believe in the communion of Baptists only. I dare not sit with them exclusively. I think I should be almost strict communicators, enough not to sit with them at all, because I should say there is not the communion of saints, it is the communion of Baptists. Whosoever loves the Lord Jesus Christ in verity and truth, have a hearty welcome, and is not only permitted but invited to communion with the Church of Christ. However, we can say with all our hearts that differences has never lost us one good friend yet. I see around me our independent brethren. They certainly have been to AENOM today, for there has been much water here, and I see round about me dear, strict communion brethren, and one of them is about to address you. He is not so strict a communionist, but what he really in his own heart communes with all the people of God. I can number among my choicest friends many members of the Church of England, and some of every denomination. I glory in that fact. However sternly a man may hold the right of private judgment, he yet can give his right hand with as tight a grip to everyone who loves the Lord Jesus Christ. Now, with regard to our prospects, we are to build this place, and the prospect, I anticipate, is that it will be paid for before it is open. I think it is likely to be so, because if we carry out our intention as a committee, we have a notion that if our friends do not give us liberal contributions, we will put up the carcass and roof in it and allow them to come in and stand. Those who want seats can buy them. I am sure my people will soon get me a pulpit, and such is the zeal of our brethren that they would soon build me a baptistry. I leave it open for any generous friends here who pleases to do so, to engage to provide some part of the tabernacle, to say, I will give that. Churchmen give painted windows for their places of worship. And if some of you agree to give different parts of the chapel, it may be so erected. You must understand that our large expenditure is caused partly by the fact that we have immense schoolrooms underground, and also a lecture hall, holding between 800 and 900 persons for church meetings. That is necessary because our church is of such an immense size, and our members come out to every service if possible. There is no church edifice in London so well used as ours is. They hack it to pieces. We must build this tabernacle strongly. I am sure for our friends are always with us. They love to be at the prayer meetings. There are no people who take out their quarters seat money so fully. They say, we will hear all that we can and depend upon it. They never give me a chance of seeing the seats empty. But our desire is, after we have fitted up our vestry schools and other rooms, that we shall be able to build other chapels. Sir Morton Peto is the man who builds one chapel with the hope that it will be the seating for another, and we will pretty soon try our hands at it. Our people have taken to chapel building, and they will go on with it. They built a chapel that held nearly 1,000 hearers in Horslide Down for Benjamin Keach. Then they built one in Carter Lane for Dr. Gill, then one in Park Street for Dr. Ripton. And now we have set about building one here. God spare in my life, if I have my people at my back, I will not rest until the dark county of Surrey is covered with places of worship. I look on this tabernacle as only the beginning. Within the last 6 months we have started 2 churches, one in Wandsworth and the other in Greenwich, and the Lord has prospered them. The pool of baptism has often been stirred with converts. And what we have done in 2 places, I am about to do in a 3rd, and we will do it, not for the 3rd or the 4th, but for the 100th time, God being our helper. I am sure I may make my strongest appeal to my brethren, because we do not mean to build this tabernacle as our nest and then to be idle. We must go from strength to strength and be a missionary church, and never rest until not only this neighborhood, but our country, of which it is said that some parts are as dark as India, shall have been enlightened with the gospel. Mr. Inskip of Bristol said, I appear today as a representative of one who is confined to a sick chamber and has not seen the outside of the city for some years past. But that chamber is enlivened and enlightened by the bright illumination of the eternal Spirit. That man's large fortune has been dedicated to his Lord. He is 83 years of age, and he has given away upwards of £80,000. And he has sent me here to say that he will give you £3,000. And what is more, if 20 gentlemen will come forward with £100 each upon the opening of this chapel, I am prepared to put down 200 to meet theirs. It is not for me to allow the man, and therefore I leave him in his solitude with an earnest prayer, in which no doubt many of you will unite, that the Lord will grant to him the bright shinings of his countenance in his last declining hours. As regards this building which is about to be erected, it is a matter of considerable delight to me to be able to forward in the least degree the views of my friend, Mr. Spurgeon. He has been my happiness to hear of many sinners in the west of England brought to a knowledge of Christ through his ministry. Let me now place on this stone, in accordance with the mission with which I am entrusted, not a painted window, but a printed piece of paper. Many other donations were laid upon the stone before the assembly dispersed. About 2,000 persons sat down to tea in the repository, and at 6:30 the chair was taken by the Lord Mayor, Adam and Wire, when other addresses were delivered and large additional contributions made. The total proceeds of the day amounting to between £4,000 and £5,000. In due course, the full amount required to claim the extra 2,000 from Bristol was forthcoming, and the generous friend there gave the amount he had authorized Mr. Inskip to promise on his behalf. At the close of the entry in the church book, from which the above account is condensed, there is in Mr. Spurgeon's handwriting, under date September 5, 1859, the following paragraph. As a record of the laying of the first stone, the accompanying report is inserted. We were highly favored with the smile of our Heavenly Father, and desire to raise a joyful Ebenezer in remembrance of the happy event. May God speed the work and permit us to meet for his service within the walls of this spacious edifice, thus joyously commenced. In January 1860, the total receipts had grown to £16,868, 6 shillings, 2 dimes. And on Monday evening, April the 2nd, one more crowded meeting was held at New Park Street Chapel, under the presidency of the pastor, to hear a statement as to the progress of the building fund and to adopt measures for obtaining additional contributions. Mr. Spurgeon mentioned that the number of members had nearly reached 1,500, and that there was a constant and regular stream of inquirers and candidates for church fellowship, and we had no doubt that soon after the new tabernacle was open and all the organizations were in operation, they would have over 3,000 members in full communication with them. Mr. Cook reported that there had been received up to that date £18,904, 15 shillings, 2 dimes, but it was estimated that a further sum of 12,000 would be required before the tabernacle could be opened free of debt. Towards this amount, upwards of £500 was contributed that evening. The remainder of this chapter consists of autobiographical paragraphs, which Mr. Spurgeon had intended to use in narrating this portion of his life story. It has always been a subject of satisfaction to me that Newington Butts was the site selected for the erection of the tabernacle. It appears that in the old days of persecution, some Baptists were burnt at the Butts at Newington. probably one or near the very spot where thousands have been brought to the Lord and have confessed their faith in the identical way which cost their predecessors their lives. If this is not actually an incident in which the blood of the martyrs has proved to be, the seat of the church is most certainly a most interesting and pleasing coincidence. Our district seems to have furnished other martyrs, for in a record dated 1546 we read, 3 men were condemned as Anabaptists and burnt in the highway between southward and towards Newington. Though that description is not very explicit, the region referred to could not have been very far from the place where these many years there has been gathered a great congregation of those believers whom some people still erroneously persist in calling Anabaptists, though we most strenuously hold to one Lord, one faith, one baptism. Our friends were at first not at all agreed as to the position which they thought would be most suitable for the new sanctuary. Some would have liked it to go as far west as Kensington. Others would have preferred the northern district of Holloway, while some would have gone nearer to Clapham. But as soon as I found that it was possible for us to obtain the site formerly occupied by the almshouses belonging to the Fishmongers' Company, I set my heart upon securing that position. I could see that it was a great advantage to be so near the spot where many great public roads converged, and in a region from which we might reasonably expect to draw a large part of our future congregation. When the male members of the church were summoned to attend a special meeting for the transaction of important business in connection with the site for the new tabernacle, the sisters, who were unable to be present on the occasion, were greatly concerned. And when it somehow leaked out that the pastor wished to buy the land in a certain position, and that some of the members of the building committee wanted to go elsewhere, every one of our brethren who had a wife or daughter or sister or sweetheart, before he started for that memorable meeting, received some such injunctions as this: never you mind what anybody else says, you vote for the pastor's purposes. So it came to pass that as soon as I described the advantages of the Newton Butt site, there is such an emphatic endorsement of my recommendation that it was quite useless for any other position to be mentioned, and the meeting decided accordingly. I had said to the friends of the committee, who would have preferred some other site, I have 2 plans for carrying out my proposal. The first is to call the male members together and to consult them about the matter. When the special church meeting had been held and its verdict was so decisive, one of the objectors said to me, you told us that you had 2 plans for carrying out your proposal. What was the second one? Oh, I replied, simply that I had made up my mind not to go elsewhere, as I felt sure that we had divine guidance to the right spot. The brother was rather amused at my answer to his question, but he and all the rest soon came round to my way of thinking, and we all rejoiced together that the Lord had so graciously prepared the place on which we were to erect our holy and beautiful house to his praise and glory. It was certainly by the special providence of God that Mr. James Spicer and other friends were placed upon the court of the Fishmonger Company just when their services were needed to enable us to secure the land. And it was also a matter for sincere congratulations that the company was able to sell the freehold, for I would never have built the tabernacle on leasehold or copyhold ground, as so many other places of worship have been erected. Soon after the building operations commenced, I went to the site with Mr. Cook, the secretary of our committee, and there in the midst of the bricks, and mortar and stone and scaffold poles, and so on, we 2 knelt down and prayed for the Lord's blessing in the whole enterprise, and also asked that no one of the many workmen employed might be killed or injured while they were helping to rear our new place of worship. I was afterwards able to testify that our prayer-hearing God had graciously granted both of our requests. I have one among many reasons for speaking with bated breath as to anything which God hath wrought by me, because in my heart of hearts I am made to feel that the true honor belongs to unknown helpers who serve the Lord and yet have none of the credit of having done so. I cannot help being pushed to the front, but I envy those who have done good by stealth and have refused to have their names so much as whispered. I do not think I ever told in public until the night of my pastoral silver wedding celebration, May 19, 1879, one fact which will ever live in my memory. The tabernacle was to be built, and some 30,000 would be wanted. We did not know when we started that it would be so much. We thought about 12 or 15,000 pounds would suffice, and we felt that we were rather bold to venture upon that. When we came to the undertaking of responsibilities, there was a natural shrinking on the part of the committee with which we started. No one could be blamed. It was a great risk, and personally I did not wish anyone to undertake it. I was quite prepared for any risk, but then I had no money of my own, and so was a man mere of straw. There was in some of our friends a measure of fear and trembling, but I had none. I was as sure upon the matter as possible, and reckoned upon paying all the cost. This quiet assurance, however, had a foundation which reflects credit upon one who has for some years gone to his reward. When I was riding with a friend to preach in the country, a gentleman overtook us and asked me if I would get out of the trap and ride with him in his gig, as he wished to speak with me. I did so. He said, "You have got to build that big place." I said, "Yes." He said, "You will find that many friends will feel nervous over it. Now, as a businessman, I am sure you will succeed, and besides that, God is with the work, and it cannot fail. I want you never to feel anxious or downcast about it." I told him that it was a great work, and that I hoped the Lord would enable me to carry it through. "What do you think," he asked, "would be required at the outset to finish it off altogether?" I replied, 20,000 pounds must do it, in addition to what we have. Then he said, "I will let you have the 20,000 pounds, on the condition that you shall only keep what you need of it to finish the building. Mark," he added, "I do not expect to give more than 50 pounds, but you shall have bonds and leases to the full value of 20,000 pounds to fall back upon." This was truly royal. I told no one, but the ease of mind this act gave me was of the utmost value. I had quite as much need of faith, for I resolved that none of my friends' money should be touched, but I had no excuse for fear. God was very good to me, but by this fact I was disabled from all personal boasting. My friend gave his 50 pounds and no more, and I felt deeply thankful to him for the help which he would have rendered had it been required. There were others who did like generous deeds anonymously, and among them was a giver of 5,000 pounds. If there be honors to be worn by anyone, let these dear brethren wear them. End of chapter 57. Having been read by Peter John Paresis, also known as Brian Dean. None of my audios are copyrighted. Please feel free to make as many copies as you desire to the glory of God.